Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Jawad Tehami and these are the headlines. Pakistan's Foreign Office says the resolution of Kashmir dispute is imperative for durable peace and stability in the region. At a weekly news briefing, spokesperson Zahid Hafiz Chaudhry called for an international probe into the extrajudicial killings of Kashmiris. Meanwhile, National Security Advisor Dr. Mueed Yusuf said the cabinet has decided not to resume trade with India until it reviews its decision of scrapping Kashmir's special status. In occupied Kashmir, anti-India protests break out after the occupying forces killed 3 Kashmiris in Pulwama district. 4 people, including a woman, have been injured as Indian forces shot pellets and tear gas to disperse the angry protesters. At least 50 people have died and over 150 others are injured when a train derailed in a tunnel in eastern Taiwan. The Transport Ministry said the train derailed after hitting a truck in the island's worst rail disaster in 4 decades. The train was en route to the southeastern city of Taitung, carrying mostly tourists. India has yet again reported this year's highest 469 deaths from COVID-19 and over 81,000 infections overnight. Pakistan has registered over 5,000 cases for the first time in over 9 months, while 83 people died overnight. Globally, the virus has claimed 2.8 million lives and infected over 129 million people so far. Those are the headlines and detailed stories right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. Pakistan says the resolution of Kashmir dispute is imperative for durable peace and stability in the region. At a weekly press briefing, Foreign Office spokesperson Zahid Hafiz Chaudhry called for an international probe into the extrajudicial killings of Kashmiris. Relations between the two arch rivals soured in August 2019 when India unilaterally scrapped the special status of occupied Kashmir. A thaw was reached last month after the two neighbors agreed on strict observance of the 2003 ceasefire deal along the line of control. However, Pakistan's Foreign Office says there is no change in Islamabad's policy on occupied Jammu and Kashmir. It said Pakistan has never shied away from talks with India, but an enabling environment needs to be created for a constructive dialogue. Meanwhile, National Security Advisor Dr. Mueed Yusuf said the cabinet has decided not to resume trade with India until it reviews its decision of scrapping Kashmir's special status. In occupied Kashmir, anti-India protests break out after the occupying forces killed 3 Kashmiris in Pulwama district. The Indian troops also blasted a house with explosive material during a so-called cordon and search operation. Hundreds of people took to the streets to protest against the killing of the youths. They chanted slogans seeking the end of Indian rule over the region. Indian troops shot pellets and tear gas at the protesters, wounding at least 10 people, including a woman. A total of 14 Kashmiris have been killed and over 100 others arrested during the past 30 days. Russia says the road ahead in the ongoing talks held to pave the way for the revival of the 2015 nuclear deal is not easy and will require massive efforts. Russia's envoy to Vienna, Mikhail Ulyanov's remarks come after a virtual meeting of Iran, Russia, China and the UK, which was chaired by the European Union. Ulyanov said the stakeholders are ready to take on the challenges. Meanwhile, Iranian Foreign Ministry said world powers will hold the next meeting in Vienna on Tuesday. Iran's Deputy Foreign Minister Sayyid Abbas Araghchi reiterated that Iran will stop violating the deal as soon as the US lifts the sanctions. Russia says the US is prolonging the withdrawal of the forces from Afghanistan over the concerns for the future of current authorities in Kabul. In a press briefing, the Foreign Ministry spokesperson said despite a military technical assistance from NATO for 20 years, Kabul is still unable to address its security concerns. The U.S. is scheduled to withdraw all its forces by May 1 under a deal signed between former President Donald Trump and the Taliban. However, President Joe Biden is reneging on the pact, saying Washington finds it difficult to meet the deadline. Russia has warned against any deployment of NATO troops to Ukraine, saying this will escalate tensions. Speaking to the media, a Kremlin spokesman said the move will force Moscow to take extra measures to ensure its security. Tensions in eastern Ukraine have been high as Moscow and Kiev accuse each other of failing to implement a peace deal over Donbass. Russia has warned that a serious escalation in the conflict could destroy Ukraine. Earlier, NATO voiced concern over what it said was a big Russian military buildup near eastern Ukraine. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said Moscow wants to create a threatening atmosphere in the region. The coalition in Yemen says it has destroyed 2 missiles launched by the Houthi rebels. It says the missiles were aimed at southern Khamis Mushaid city of Saudi Arabia. In a statement, the coalition said rebels continue to target civilians and residential property in Saudi Arabia. It said coalition forces are taking operational measures to protect civilians in line with international humanitarian law. The coalition also said it destroyed a ballistic missile and a launch pad in Yemen's eastern Marib province. Yesterday, Houthis claimed to have hit multiple targets in the Saudi capital, Riyadh. In Taiwan, at least 50 people have died and over 150 are injured when a train derailed in a tunnel in the east. The transport ministry said the train derailed after hitting a truck in the island's worst rail disaster in 4 decades. The ministry said the train was headed to the southeastern city of Taitung, carrying mostly tourists. The railway authorities said over 70 people have been taken to the hospital. Meanwhile, rescue efforts are underway, while the authorities believe that all the trapped passengers have been removed. The incident occurred when people were heading home at the start of a traditional holiday of Tomb Sweeping Day. In Myanmar, pro-democracy activists have called for guerrilla strikes after the authorities cut off most users from the internet. Anti-coup groups share radio frequencies, offline internet resources to circumvent internet curbs amid continuing violence. But despite the internet shutdown, users were still able to upload pictures of marches and a funeral of a slain protester. In Mandala City, security forces opened fire at a rally, wounding 4 people. Across the country, demonstrators left bouquets at places associated with activists killed by the security forces. The death toll in Myanmar has crossed 540, with the UN warning of a bloodbath due to the ongoing crackdown. Meanwhile, Human Rights Watch says Myanmar's military has forcibly disappeared hundreds of people since the February 1st coup. In Bangladesh, at least 3 Rohingyas have been burned to death after a fire broke out at a refugee camp in Kutupalong camp of Cox's Bazar. Police say the fire has destroyed more than 20 shops in the makeshift market near the camp. Rescuers said firefighters took several hours to bring the blaze under control. The fire broke out when residents of the camp for Myanmar's Rohingya refugees were asleep. Last month, 15 refugees were killed and over 500 others injured in the massive blaze that burnt around 10,000 shelters. The United Nations says 4 peacekeepers have been killed in an attack on its base in northern Mali. In a statement, the UN mission said that several others had been wounded. It added that the peacekeepers repelled the attack on the camp carried out by heavily armed terrorists. The UN mission said that the attackers suffered heavy losses in the retaliation. Militants aligned with Al-Qaeda and ISIS are active in northern Mali. In the Netherlands, Prime Minister Mark Rutte has narrowly survived a no-confidence vote over his conduct during talks to form a governing coalition. Parliament adopted a formal motion of disapproval, which noted he had not spoken the truth during the talks. Rutte said Parliament has given him a serious message and he will try his best to win back its confidence. The crisis arose after Rutte acknowledged having privately discussed what job should go to a prominent member of the parliament who had been critical of his previous cabinet. Ruta had previously said he did not do so. British drug regulators say they have identified 30 cases of rare blood clotting after the use of the AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine. Globally, the virus has claimed 2.8 million lives and infected over 129 million people so far. More in this report.
The widening inequities in vaccinations, coupled with the new variants spearheading the latest wave, is ravaging the world. South America continues to be the hardest hit region. Chile has closed its borders and tightened an already strict lockdown as cases climb past 1 million despite one of the world's fastest vaccination rates. The Brazilian city of Sao Paulo has sped up efforts to empty old graves to make room for soaring deaths. The U.S., however, continues to herald the promising developments, as the U.S. inches closer to 100 million people getting at least one shot of COVID-19 vaccine. On the other hand, the WHO says the COVAX facility, distributing vaccines to poorer countries, is facing serious challenges to meet the demand.
The clock is still ticking on vaccine equity. We have 9 days left until we reach the 100th day of the year, and the target of starting vaccine rollout to health workers and those at risk in all countries remains in our grasp.
The World Health Organization has also criticized the rollout of vaccines in Europe as being unacceptably slow. Most European Union states have agreed to share part of their upcoming vaccine deliveries with the 5 EU countries they said need them most. Meanwhile, Belgian police clashed with a large crowd in Brussels Park after thousands of revelers gathered for an unauthorized event. Chancellor Angela Merkel has urged Germans to celebrate Easter quietly to stop the threatening third wave.
It should be a quiet Easter with only those closest to you and with very reduced contact. I urge you to refrain from all non-essential travel and that we hold to all the rules. It is no longer the very old who are fighting for their lives. Now it is also the middle-aged and younger people that need ventilation.
Turkey recorded over 40,000 single-day cases, the highest since the outbreak, as Ankara eased measures in early March. Over in Australia, the vaccine rollout in old homes has been a disaster, while authorities probe a blood clotting disorder case. A 44-year-old man was admitted to a Melbourne hospital with a possible clotting days after receiving the AstraZeneca vaccine.
In Pakistan, more than 5,000 people tested positive for COVID-19 in the past 24 hours, highest since last June. The Health Ministry said over 5,200 people contracted the virus, while 83 died overnight. The country's death tally has surpassed 14,600. The ministry said more than 678,000 people have been infected across the country, whereas more than 607,000 have recovered so far. At the moment, there are over 56,000 active cases in the country, while the country's positivity rate is hovering above 10%. Meanwhile, authorities in Pakistan have decided to vaccinate people above 65 years and above on stop from Saturday. Saudi Arabia's King Salman has wished a speedy recovery to the President of Pakistan, Dr. Arif Alvi. In a diplomatic cable, King Salman sent sincere wishes for permanent good health and happiness to Alvi. President Alvi recently tested positive for COVID-19. He has already taken the first shot of the coronavirus vaccine. Indian cricket legend Sachin Tendulkar, who tested positive for COVID-19 last week, has been admitted to hospital. In a tweet, Tendulkar said that he has decided to go to a hospital as a matter of precaution under medical advice. The former captain added that he was hoping to be back home in a few days. Several Indian cities, including Mumbai, have seen a sharp rise in COVID-19 cases in the past few weeks. Many of the new cases were reported in the western state of Maharashtra, where Tendulkar lives in the city of Mumbai. Tendulkar is considered as the greatest batsman of all time, with a record 100 centuries in all formats. More stories to follow right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi says poverty alleviation and sustainable development are among Pakistan's top priorities. He said this during a meeting with the representative of the UN Development Programme, Knut Ostby, in Islamabad. During the meeting, the Foreign Minister highlighted Pakistan's orientation towards economic diplomacy. He said the country is focused on socio-economic progress through enhanced trade and foreign investment. Qureshi suggested thematic areas where UNDP can make contributions in line with Islamabad's development priorities. Both the officials agreed to strengthen the development partnership between Pakistan and the UNDP. France has welcomed Saudi Arabia's Middle East Green Initiative, recently announced by Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman to combat climate change. In a phone call with the Crown Prince, French President Emmanuel Macron promised all possible efforts to help achieve the goals. Saudi state media said both the leaders asserted that the plan is one of the most ambitious global initiatives to combat climate change. It said the two leaders also discussed the impact of climate change on economic, social, and health sectors. Prince Salman is engaged in active green diplomacy lately to garner backing for his plan to plant billions of trees in the region. Escaping from poverty and violence and hoping for a better future, tens of thousands of migrants have trekked to the U.S. border recently. However, the hardships of this expedition have made their lives miserable. More in this report.
For years, thousands of illegal migrants have been seeking to cross into the U.S., mainly from Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, and Ecuador through Mexico. Being racked with poverty, violence, and infiltrated by drug cartels, the residents of these places are left with no other choice but to leave. However, having been dependent on human smugglers and the various other physical and legal hindrances, make their journey towards a better life no less than hell. In a recent appalling incident, smugglers dropped two little girls from the top of a 14-foot wall into the middle of the desert on the U.S.-Mexico border.
It is just a reflection of a broken immigration system, a failed strategy, the results of which are not circumstantial. For years, migrants, families, children have been exposed and they are at risk. Smugglers without any scruples are hired, so we can't blame the families. There is no solution because the immigration situation, children and families have always been treated as a police matter.
U.S. President Joe Biden's administration condemned the actions of the smugglers. White House spokesperson Jen Psaki called the traffickers as morally reprehensible, while urging the migrants to not come to the U.S. However, such statements do not seem enough to stop the desperate people who have chosen a very difficult path to fulfill their American dream.
In Egypt, arrangements are being finalized for the Pharaohs' Golden Parade. In the event, 22 royal mummies will be transported to a new home from their current residing place. More in this report.
Egypt is preparing for a grand parade, one unlikely to be held anywhere else. The main participants of the event would not be the national leaders, acrobats, or current celebrities, but dead bodies. The travel route for the Pharaohs' Golden Parade has been secured and decorated with lights and banners. Then mummies will be shifted from the Egyptian Museum in Tahrir to their final resting place in the National Egyptian Museum of Civilization in Fustat.
They're going on their last journey to go from one museum to another museum that is perhaps slightly better equipped to deal with them. But it is a poignant moment to think of so many of Egypt's royalty going through the streets of this modern capital. And in fact, they're going back to an ancient capital of Fustat. So it will be, I think, a very moving event.
The mummies will be placed in a protected capsule and moved alongside their grave goods for 48 minutes across Cairo and by Tahrir Square. The parade is one of several efforts to attract tourism in Egypt after the industry received a painful blow amid the pandemic. The numbers of tourists dropped to 3.5 million last year from 13.1 million in 2019.
The message is very important. We are going to tell the people through the parade of the mummies that Egypt is safe. We need people to come back. COVID-19 will be nothing because the mummies will stop all of that, and Cairo still have mystery and magic, and the mummies are doing that.
The almost 3,000 years old mummies are of 18 kings and 4 queens, which belong to the New Kingdom. They were discovered in 2 caches in Luxor's Deir al-Bahari and Valley of the Kings, the earliest in 1871.
Another business updates. The Suez Canal Authority says Egypt will seek compensation worth around $1 billion for the blockade caused by vessel Ever Given. Authorities chairman says the amount is an estimate of losses linked to transit fees, damage to the waterway and salvage efforts. In an interview, Osama Rabi said compensation is Egypt's right and the incident hurt the country's reputation. He did not specify whom the authority will seek the compensation from. Evergreen Marine Corporation says it is not responsible for the delays of cargo. Its president, Eric Tsai, ruled out the possibility of the company paying compensation. The 400 meters long, 224,000-ton Panama flagged ship ran aground and blocked the navigation for almost a week. The U.S. economy has created the most jobs in March at a fast pace since last summer amid aggressive vaccination efforts. The Labor Department said that the number of non-farm payrolls has surged by over 900,000. It also said the unemployment rate has declined to 6%. The gains were strongest in leisure and hospitality, while the construction sector soared by over 100,000. With students returning to schools, education hiring also boomed during the month. Pakistan's tennis legend Khawaja Saeed Hai has passed away after a protracted illness at the age of 91. He was the first Pakistani to reach the main draws of a Grand Slam Wimbledon championships. At Wimbledon, he appeared in the men's singles, men's doubles and mixed doubles. In an outstanding career, Saeed Hai captained Pakistan's Davis Cup team as many as 32 times. He also reached the second round of the French Open and played in the US Open in 1964. The International Tennis Federation awarded him with a gold medal. Saeed Hai was also a patron of the Pakistan Tennis Federation. And that's all for now. For further updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus News.